On January 22, 1959, a whirlpool suddenly appeared in the Susquehanna River in Jenkins Township, Pennsylvania. Now, folks, this wasn't your usual whirlpool because instead of being caused by ripples and currents in the river, this one was caused by the collapse of a portion of the riverbed itself. And why that happened is our story today. Hello, folks. I'm Steve Gilly, along with Rod Mullins, and you're listening to Stories, A History of Appalachia.
Well, Steve, another mining history or mining disaster type story here. I'd never heard of this, though, until you mentioned it to me here a short time ago before we started working up this script.
Yeah, this is something that occurred up in Pennsylvania in a most unusual way. You think about mine disasters, but you don't think of flooding with a river as mine disaster. Not in this way, anyway.
Right.
Well, folks, the Susquehanna River flows through the Wyoming Valley in Pennsylvania. Near the city of Pittston, and you know where Pittston is famous for.
That's
it's a
right.
coal company. Well, near the city of Pittston are two towns that sit on the banks of that river. Exeter on the western bank and Port Griffith on the eastern side in Jenkins Township. And in 1959, the coal industry in that part of Pennsylvania was in decline due to the rise of the use of oil and natural gas. The Knox Coal Company was one of the remaining coal companies in the area, and they leased a mine near the Susquehanna called the River Slope Mine from the Pennsylvania Coal Company.
The Knox Coal Company, needing to mine more and more coal to break even, had their miners dig toward the most available coal seam. In this case, the seam moved upwards through the earth straight toward the Susquehanna riverbed. Now, due to the dangers associated with mining underneath a river, namely the possibility of catastrophic flooding of the mine, there were strict regulations in place to control such mining. Well, in this case, the mine, needing all the coal it could dig, apparently ignored those regulations and ordered their men to keep following that seam. And this they did until the 22nd of January. They got up to within 19 inches of the surface. The minimum, folks, for safety's sake was 35 feet. Still, things might have been okay, but for an unusual January warm snap.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about that. You see, just a few days before this happened, rapidly rising temperatures had thawed out the river and the surrounding countryside. What that meant was that any snow on the ground had melted and found its way into creeks, which then flowed into the Susquehanna. And all that extra water meant extra weight on that 19-inch mine ceiling. So far, so good, until about 11:20 that morning. At that time, two workers in the mine heard a sharp popping sound. Alarmed, they found the assistant foreman, John Williams, and together, all three made their escape and notified the superintendent of operations, who in turn ordered an immediate evacuation. 3 men, though, were left in this section of the mine, and they lost their lives to the flood.
As the millions of gallons of water rushed into the mine, 33 men managed to evacuate, but 45 others remained trapped underground, anxiously trying to find an escape route. By this point, word had spread, and the miners' families and friends had gathered above ground to await the outcome of the men left below. 32 of the trapped men managed to escape through an abandoned air shaft with the help of the Pennsylvania Coal Company surveyor, Pacifico Joe Stella, who knew the mines like the back of his hand, and Myron Thomas in 2 groups. 12 of the bodies of the remaining men were never found.
And meanwhile, the company and the state set about trying to plug the hole in the Susquehanna River. And to do this, they used whatever they could get their hands on: mine cars, mine debris, railroad cars, Rod, and more. Eventually, they were successful in pretty much plugging up that whirlpool hole after an estimated 10 billion, with a B, gallons of water had filled the mines. Attention then turned to the salvaging of the coal left in the now submerged mine. The Pennsylvania Department of Mines and Mineral Industries began to pump water from the mine to save what they could of the coal and the anthracite coal industry in that part of the state. They also set about sealing the hole with concrete and sand for a total recovery cost of $5 million. That's in 1959 dollars. So it'd be a whole lot more today, which they tried to get the Knox and Pennsylvania coal companies to pay. Did they pay?
Of course not,
Well,
Steve.
No. Knox Coal Company filed bankruptcy and paid nothing. And Pennsylvania Coal Company, which had leased the mine to Knox and didn't operate it, got out of paying too, since they were only the lessor and didn't control Knox's actions. That didn't stop the state from pursuing criminal charges, though, did it, Ron?
No, it didn't, Steve, because the mine superintendent, Robert Dowdy, the owner, Louis Fabrizio, I hope I got that right, or Louis Fabrizio, August J. Lippi, and he was the president of District 1 of the United Mine Workers of America, and the secret...
that's a story in itself right
really?
there as we get along into this, yeah.
Okay, well, and the secret recipient of stock in the Knox Coal Company, I guess that's him, Lippi or Lippy.
Yes, it is. It is.
Right. Well, it made him a mine owner and co-owner with Fabrizio, and 3 union officials were indicted on several charges, including violation of mining and labor laws, conspiracy, and manslaughter. Lippi's daughter was also employed by the company as the, what is that, chiropodist or foot?
Chiropodist.
Chiropodist? Well, shows you how much I know about a foot doctor. I thought that was a podiatrist. But anyway, she served as one of those, a foot doctor for the employees.
Well, none of these men were ever convicted on the more serious charges, although some of them were convicted on tax evasion and paid small fines and served short jail sentences. The damage caused by the flooding caused the local coal industry to more or less shut down, with a total direct and indirect job loss of over 7,000 and a payroll loss of over $30 million. The incident caused changes in the mining laws in Pennsylvania, setting out in great detail the things a mine could and couldn't do near above-ground structures and natural waterways. And, the thing that gets me is Mr. Lippi and Mr. Fabrizio getting into some kind of a corrupt deal where Mr. Lippi becomes a mine owner. I guess he thought, man, I'm doing some pretty good stuff for me. I've got all this stock. And then, it made him responsible for what happened. But he certainly wasn't watching out for his men, that's for sure.
No, well, he was double dipping as far as I'm concerned, the way I look at it. He was double dipping on one side and padding his pocket with the other. But, this story is almost, in some ways it's very similar, because we're talking about fire, we're talking about water in this case, but I start thinking about the fire and the mines up there because they dumped garbage off into those mines. And then those fires, just have burned, to continue to burn and burn and burn. And, this is one of the dangers, I guess, if you want to say that. This is the danger of mining, especially close to a water source, especially the Susquehanna River in this case. Hey, at that time, it was you mine as much coal at any cost that you can and everything to try to keep your livelihood, your job going and so forth. And that's what they were doing.
Well, a little bit of greed too, don't you think?
Yeah, I have to say that too.
If you're trying to get as much coal as you can get, you're going to ignore the safety regulations and get up to 19 inches from the bottom of the river. And if you are the union foreman and you're supposed to be watching out for your men, you'd want to say, no, we don't want to get that far up. But if you also own stock in the company, you're going to say, yeah, we can do this.
Yeah.
Let's get some more coal. And then you get a disaster like this.
Well, the other thing that bothers me about this is typical, and I say this, and I mean this as best I can, in typical coal company fashion, when it came time for the finger to be pointed at someone and the coal company in general to pay up, what do? Declare bankruptcy and then go out of existence to where they don't have to pay a penny out of it. And that, of course, was wrong too.
Yeah, 4 wives of the miners filed lawsuits of $15,000 each. They also came out with nothing.
Yeah.
And other coal companies sued Knox Coal for ruining their mines because of the flooding, and they too got nothing.
Well, that water going in there and stuff, that literally changed, I guess, the seam in one degree or another. With all that water going through there, that changed access and how to get to this seam and so forth, and rearrange things, so to speak. I mean, you really have to think about this. Water can do tremendous things. Water is just not something to drink. It can change a lot of things. And that's what it did in this case.
And it pretty much destroyed the entire mining industry there around Pittston because of that. Well, folks, that's the story of the Knox mine disaster of 1959. Another part of the history of this place we call home, Appalachia. Thanks for listening. Now, you can subscribe to the Stories Podcast on your favorite podcast app, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or whichever one it happens to be. Again, thanks for listening. Till next we meet. So long, everybody.